And we're back with the question and answer session, or as you've been termed now, After Dark section of the Captain's Table podcast, where we take questions from the audience on this topic we discussed in the main show, and just whatever people want to talk about with Star Citizen. Again, I'm joined by HC Vertigo. You can find on twitch.tv/HC Vertigo, and RedJ. You can find youtube.com/RedJ to find out their content. But we just had a discussion about 4.1, the issues with the Hathor system, the stations, and how there's a kind of a more fundamental problem with the PvPvE experience and how CIG tests for it and how they design for it that seem to be illustrated by the problems with Hathor. And with that, let's get into the questions specifically, starting with a question from Escape, who asks, how idiotic is CIG for implementing stealth without scanning counter gameplay? F7CR gameplay mechanics when?
I have strong opinions about stealth in Star Citizen right now and how absolutely cancerous it is. It is the most frustrating experience to dogfight someone who's using a stealth Hornet with full stealth components in Star Citizen at the moment. Because if you get them down a little bit, it's basically the same problem we had the previous flight model before Master Mode. You could just drift out of weapons range and then you lose target lock. And it's like you can't do anything at that point because you need target lock to lock fire missiles. You need target lock it to actually have a pip to shoot at for your guns to converge. Otherwise, you just have to guess, and at that point, you're missing 80% of your shots, or if not 90% of shots. It's impossible to dogfight somebody who you can't target. And like I said, if you get their shields down a little bit, they just run away, and then you can't lock onto them, or they drop countermeasures and they go into nav mode and they run away. It's awful. Go for it, Paul.
I get it. I think that the simple solution is just to buff scanners, because I mean, like, in my
opinion, who's going to talk here?
Well, let me finish up by just saying I think they should buff scanners on certain ships. So certain ships just have better scanners, can pick up things further away. That's it. So, like, I know that's not a solution, that's a temporary solution to a temporary problem, but I think that's an easier solution to do because we have no idea when scanning is going to come into the game. I'm sure CIG is hoping it's coming in soon, but CIG was also hoping that Squadron 42 was going to release in 2016, and we see how that turned out. There's plenty of hope at CIG, and then there's the reality. And I think the reality is the current implementation of stealth is not even a new implementation. It's been done before, as you mentioned, and it was still cancer then. It was still problematic then, and it's not any less problematic now. So
yeah, and I'm putting stealth on all my ships, even the ships that aren't supposed to be stealthy, like my Cutlass Black, just so people leave me alone. I mean, sure, the Cutlass Black, I think you're limited to like cross section, which is like 13K, which is like 13 kilometers for like size 1 sensors, but still, you can still park that thing far enough away to avoid it. But in my opinion, what CIG needs to do for stealth is like whatever the maximum weapon range is for your guns, add like 500 meters, maybe 1 kilometer to that, and that should be the absolute minimum range that you could be detected for with a full stealth loadout, and that's with your shields on, your guns off.
Mm.
So if you turn your shields off, you turn your guns off. Yeah, you can basically fly up to somebody and almost touch them, maybe like a kilometer away from. I don't give a shit. But with your guns up, your shields up, and you're actually in combat, I should be able to detect you from a little bit outside my gun range.
Yeah. Well,
right?
same with missiles. That's one of the huge problems right now is that you can be completely stealth and arm and target a missile without anybody seeing you. It's like that should light you up like a Christmas tree.
If you lock somebody with missiles or torpedoes, it should immediately like be a red. Like you should break stealth from any distance.
Yeah.
Targeting like weapons and like missiles, missile targeting systems should break stealth. There's no way, unless you have some sort of passive guidance torpedo or something, which would be a very very special torpedo that'd be very expensive that allows you to basically have someone else target. But we don't really have that in game right now. So like stuff like the Hornet Tracker, like, yeah, it's great. Great for the Hornet Tracker, right? You know, but for everyone else who doesn't own a Hornet Tracker or maybe doesn't want to play with a Hornet Tracker, like, you have to get someone to fly the Hornet Tracker to counter the Stealth Hornet or the Saber, but only that person can see the Saber or the Hornet, right? With the tracker, everyone else is just blind to that. And imagine like 50 people flying around with Stealth Hornets and just how just awful that furball is going to be, right? Because even if because the meta is everybody has stealth components, so every time everyone gets 5 kilometers away from each other, they all lose targeting, and it's just Star Citizen is it's awful to play, right? I've done it a couple of times this patch, and it's terrible. Like, I agree that stealth should be a thing because they've been selling stealth ships, but if you're in gun range, a little bit past gun range, like, I should be able to still target you, throw missiles at you, but if you're a little bit outside of gun range, like disappear. A kilometer outside gun, you should disappear, right? Be able to slip away. Because combat, this is the problem we had with the old flight model, was space combat wasn't sticky enough. It was too easy to intentionally disengage or slip outside of weapon range, or even accidentally slip outside weapon range. And at that point, everybody's shields recharge and the fight just resets. And that's what we constantly have with this stealth problem, is the fight constantly just resets because everybody just breaks off from each other. Shields recharge, everybody tries to find each other by doing the scanner pulse, which is not good enough, right? So you see a contact over there, so you fly at it, and it's like the guy moved, so he's not there anymore. You do keep doing scanner pulses. It's like, oh, nope, that's an asteroid. Scanner pulse. Nope, that's a herd of quasi grazers over there. It's not good. That's my opinion on it. It's not very good.
It doesn't feel good. It makes that's the big thing. It feels bad.
Feels bad.
Yeah. And as much as I've said that in the past, and people are like, what is this feels bad thing? And it's like, it comes from wargaming, tabletop wargaming, where like a game can be pretty balanced, and then there can be one thing that one opponent can do, which is just sort of shitty. It works, but it's shitty, and it can be really leaned into. So the point where you're just like, well, why do I play? Why am I playing this? If you can just spam this the entire time, it's sort of like the shitty move that you can do in fighting games where you can just do one thing and spam it a bunch and then you can't counter it. It's like this feels bad. That's what it feels bad is.
I actually have like an excellent anecdote on that. Dawn of War, which was made by Relic Entertainment, released version of the game. There was a matchup between orcs and Eldar. This was before they were called the Eldari. Where the orcs had all light infantry up until very late in the game, where eventually they get some heavy infantry. But the Eldar had what was called the Warp Spider unit, which was perfect for killing light infantry. And Orc versus Eldar matchup was basically the Orc just lost 90% of the time. And if you were loved playing the Orc faction in Dawn of War, you basically every time you got lined up against an Eldar player, you basically just resigned. Yeah, you basically just Alt F4.
You win. Good job. Good
job. You picked the right faction against me, and you just left the game.
Yeah. And that becomes not fun because there's no point in playing it. And I think that's one of the problems with stealth is that it just, good job, you broke the game.
You had the right strategy. You brought the right stuff to the battlefield, and now I just don't want to play it anymore.
And there's no way I can counter it, so I don't want to play this anymore. You know, is it kind of like childish? Yeah, but it's also a video game. Like I want to play the game. If I'm fighting a stealth opponent, I want to be able to find ways that I can counter that, and that they can counter my counter, or they can play better. There needs to be some skill element instead of just I have the right equipment. Fuck you, and that's bad. Your thoughts, Red J, on stealth in Star Citizen as it currently stands? Issues, goods, bads.
Yeah, echo a lot of what you both said. Basically, you can have it where it breaks the game's ability to counter it. Also, one of the biggest problems is exactly what was said already. The tracker and other ships that are designed to have link capabilities do not have said systems, and it's going to get worse as we get bigger and bigger ships. These ships should be like a flagship of the fleet, being able to transmit information back and forth to the rest of the fleet where targets are. And then it's going to be an even bigger problem when EVE gets involved, but let's just stick to this.
Yeah. I think it's a solution. The thing is that we have partial implementation of resources. So like the resource system is in the game right now, but none of the things that connect to the resource system are in engineering, scanning, anything like that. So it's sort of like you can do stealth because it's part of the resource system, but there's just it's not a gameplay loop. It's just a half implemented gameplay loop. So at least it's sort of just weird feeling experience. So, and you know what? I will 100% admit I in my organization, there are players who are in my organization who will have a cancer stealth build. And it's
you have to if you want to be competitive.
And it's, right, I mean, to be fair, we almost always use it for scouting. So we'll go to an area where that person will show up first and they'll scout out an area because they know that they just can't be seen. So like they can check to see if there's other people around them. And so it's a nice kind of what stealth is designed to be used for. I can see everybody who's here and I can report back to what's going on and they can't see me.
But and like I said, like if you have your weapons and shields off, you should almost be able to touch enemy ships, yeah, right? Unless it's a very specific ship in that fleet, like a Hornet Tracker or a Terrapin or something. Mm. But yeah, for stealth in combat, like active dogfighting stealth, that's not too good.
Yes, stealth should be an approach, not a combat solution. Yeah. It should be an approach solution. All right, Escape asks, and I'll start with you on this, Rodre. Perseus by ILW, complete? Arguments?
Ooh, that's a tough one. I'm not sure. I think that there's a lot of push for the Apollo. You know, we've been hearing rumblings of that. Perseus certainly has been on the push lately as well. Like that was actually part of like their whole push into RSI in general. These big ships. Sorry, I keep using the same word, everybody. Yeah. It's certainly plausible. It's certainly more likely than the Idris, despite what I wish it was. Mm-hmm. I wish it was the other way around. I wish we'd see at least the Idris P and K combination, you know, out there. But Crew said a long time ago that he'd rather have the entire hit go together. So the P and then the K upgrades, modules, and then the M. So yeah, I think the Perseus would be an easier thing for them to get out the door, you know, in a playable state. Yeah, I could see it.
I'm going to say maybe, but leaning on no, because last monthly report, they said that it just went from white box to gray box, and it's a big ship. Yeah, it's not the size of Polaris. It's like 100 meters long, so it's not huge, but it's still pretty big. And for a ship to go from gray box to release in, 2 months, I think is at that size, that feels a little
especially
fast.
At that size.
Yeah. Feels a little, ooh. I think maybe shortly after, maybe in the summer, but what do you think, Vertigo?
Polaris.
Not Polaris, Perseus.
Polaris took a long time to get done. Yeah. Polaris was a concept for a long time. Perseus, I think they're working on it, right? I've seen
it's in gray box. It left white box. It left white box into gray box this month. So.
And I'm gonna say something bold yet controversial. Just because a ship's in gray box or white box doesn't mean it's gonna be released anytime soon.
Okay.
Yeah, just
like controversial. How can you be so brave and yet so
I just because CIG says they're working on something doesn't mean it's actually gonna get done, right? Yeah. Anytime soon. They've been working on the Idris on and off for years, and it's still not in the game. And if the Idris was released in the game, it'd be the Polaris plus the Idris. It'd be, oh god, the problems at Hathor would be even worse.
Mm-hmm. People are saying they do have the Polaris assets to use. They do, but like I would believe the Apollo is coming before the Perseus because it's smaller, and the issue is just the number of assets you have to create, and just because even if you're reusing assets from the Perseus or from the Polaris, there's still going to be some unique assets you're going to have to create from scratch, or you're going to have to blend, or things like that. And because it's an older design, there are going to be some slight tweaks and buffs and changes here and there. I can imagine the exteriors would be very different looking from the Polaris. The Polaris has that unique sort of really greebled look on it, and I don't think that's going to stick around with any, especially older RSI ships. So. Next question. By the way, y'all feel free to keep asking questions. We're currently only have 4 more, so this has not been a lot of good questions. So Gin and Tonic asks, what was CIG's desired result from the current mission in question? Specifically the line in mind. That's a good question. Because I think it comes, a lot of what CIG wants to do comes down to, or like my issue personally with it is that I believe, because we don't know exactly what the desire for CIG is. They haven't outright, I don't think Elliot's come out and said what the purpose of this whole line in mind was. Is it a PvP? Is it a PvE? Is it supposed to throw players together?
I think I think it's content that's supposed to like increase the daily active.
Okay. So you think it's just there for people to show up?
Yeah.
Okay. I think it has more purpose than that. I think it's sort of like it's going to be reused for other things. Like those minerals are going to end up being important for other aspects of the game. And so you're going to have to go to that. I think this is their attempt to sort of, you know how CitizenCon, they talked about the intersectionality of different aspects. Like if you wanted to get your Hornet, you had to go you had to go mine, because this mining organization has the plans for you to build the Hornet. So you have to go mine and get reputation with this mining organization. And then when you get the plans, then you have to go over here to build the facility to be able to build it in the first place. And then you have to go work with this organization. But all of them were sort of connected in some sort of way as a back and forth to be able to achieve that final Hornet, to be able to go off and do mercenary missions. I feel like that's kind of what this is sort of an attempt for CIG to link several different mission givers and missions together and then be able to weave those back in with each other over time. So you'll never just do this for one mission or for one group. This thing will end up being important for other missions down the line or for other events, so they could just reuse that same situation, but just now it's under a new context. Like, oh, now you're helping the headhunters, and they can add stuff to the mines or whatever if they need to in the future. Reggie, what are your thoughts? What do you think the purpose is of this event, the Hathor mining stuff? What was CIG's goal with this?
To take assets they already had sitting around and introduce brand new content on top of it. So it's a lot to throw at the player. Very exciting stuff. Bringing in Wicklow with a bang, and having the B plot come in for the healthcare and the Rayari stuff, all kind of intertwined into the same build. And yeah, I think it's just going to become built upon and built upon. This is not the last we've seen of any of this, especially Wicklow.
Wicklow is going to be coming back. I think he's going to end up being one of the main characters that we encounter throughout the story of Star Citizen. So, all right. Troubled Magnet asks, should CIG add some kind of incentive for playing the PTU? If so, any idea of what activities should be rewarded and how? Cosmetics, main account money, or items, or something totally different? I'm going to throw this over to you, Red J, but I'm going to start off by saying there is currently some incentive because CIG does have a leaderboard for testers, and they give the top testers of every patch a ship and other rewards and some good boy points by shouting them out on their website as a thank you for testing. So that has been the case for several years now. So there are some things, but I guess the question is more, how could they improve that? So Reggie, your thoughts on what should CIG do to encourage people playing the PTU?
Well, I think that the issue council needs to be easier and more accessible to players. It should be in game that you can submit those and that it snapshots what you're doing.
Oh yeah, exactly.
It's just built in, like from the start, and you get positive feedback while you're playing. Like you get like an achievement unlock for doing 5 of them and they've been accepted or reviewed by different players, or they haven't been. You're getting that feedback right away, that satisfaction of like, hey, I'm experiencing this crappy tram experience so other people don't have to experience it. And
congratulations, your submission has been reviewed by a CIG employee and approved. And you get a little pop-up on your screen.
And here's a little gun paint and you can use it in live. I feel like something like that would be so much more. I do agree with you, Paul. I think the leaderboards is great. I'm not trying to down on that at all. I just feel like if you want to get a large amount of testers, have that more in the game, very quick rewards, high dopamine hit for helping out, and you get a ton more people doing it.
I 100% agree. Achievements are, as someone says, they are a low effort way to get players to do things. So and there will always be somebody who wants that achievement. And I think achievements or I hate the badges. I hate the Spectrum badges. They're so, I am firmly of the belief that everything in Star Citizen should be in game. Even buying ships with cash should be in game. Everything should be in game. All things should be in game, and out of game should be supplementary to the stuff in game and more just a repository of stuff that's in the game. Because it's a video game. I don't want to have to go to a website to do something in a video game. So
the only way you'd make the Spectrum badges matter is if like there's a right-click profile on players in game.
Yes.
And then you can proudly support one of them. You can show off one of them, or there's like a literal nameplate over people's heads that has it. I would
Spectrum
recommend
badges, literally useless.
Yes.
Oh my god.
How about you, Vertigo? How would you improve the PTU experience?
I don't think they can. I mean, they're already bribing people to do it, but make it less friction. They're trying their best, and it's just like they're not getting the engagement. Like, I got nothing, Paul. Sorry, man.
Okay, that's fine. Mopar225 asks, would it be possible to somehow make a system that only new players have access to learn the game, train, without being worried about griefing or making new players invincible so they could learn? I mean, I've talked about the idea of doing a new player experience for a long time that is effectively using the Arena Commander system they have. I will pitch my new player experience. I've done this a couple times on the captain's table, but I'll pitch the idea. You wake up in a bed, you get a message. The message is, congratulations, your ship, your new purchased RSI Aurora is available at the local spaceport, insert spaceport here. Please stop by the information counter at the spaceport to get your keys. Thank you again for shopping at RSI, whatever. And it automatically sets in your mobiGlas a waypoint. So, because you get some sort of buzzing noise where it's like, oh, buzzing noise, and a little prompt says, hit F1 to pull up your mobiGlas, and then you do it, and then it says, here's the location. It immediately takes you from that to the map, takes control over it, and you go to location, and it automatically sets that location, and then you can just follow the mini map to where it is. Go to the spaceport, and then you go talk to the person behind it. They say you have an option, so you can have dialogue option, and you go, I'm here to pick up my keys, and they go, oh, right, yeah, I got that earlier. Oh, by the way, the UE is offering a bonus credits for anybody who takes the flight pilot's test. Would you like to take the pilot's test before you go? And if you go, yes, they'll take you back behind the counter and go you into a sim pod, and then in a sim pod you have a instanced experience where you just learn how to fly the ship, and if you die, you just reset back to the last save point. Use the save points you're developing for Squadron 42, implement it into this. So that way, players have a nice, easy, quick solution way of learning how to fly and do things, picking up boxes, moving things around. You can have fun with it. But because it's instanced, it's not connected to any landing zone. You could put it in any landing zone, as long as it's not criminal, but I don't they should do criminal or whatever. And then when you're done, you leave, you get your stuff, and you can go. And then every single profession should have some sort of NPC-driven tutorial experience. And the key is, if you're a new player, if you're not a new player, if you're an old player and you start the game, say we've been playing the game, the 1.0 comes out, you have all of that experience, but when you get to the point where you pick up your keys, you can just say, nope, and move on. And there's no consequences to that. You can just skip the tutorial and move right on to what you need to do. And you don't have to do any of these intro missions for like the different features, any of that. You can just do what you need to do. But if you do them, you get a little bit of good boy points, maybe some reputation bonuses, and you get a little bit of credits, and you get a nice little story, a nice little instant story of you on a mole doing some mining, or on a reclaimer doing some salvaging, or on a cutlass steel or a cutlass to do some combat work, whatever tutorialization you need to do, but all in sort of an instanced area so players don't have to interact with you. So to answer the question effectively, should there be some sort of instance starter? I believe yes, but I also think this should be seamlessly integrated into the game, not some sort of you start the game, you don't see anybody, and then you do the tutorial and you leave. There needs to be some sort of way to opt into it, and then once you opt into it, you go into the instance. What do you think, Portico? Should there be a sort of instance starter?
Yeah, I think there should be. Like, players should have like something in the persistent universe that's a tutorial where no one else can mess. I mean, EVE Online was smart enough; they had that where you would learn profession, and you get access to a little part of space with a special card that only you could access with the card, and then you'd learn the professions in those little instances. And I think Star Citizen really should have. You know, put people in the kiddie pool before they throw them into the deep end. Yep. So I don't really consider Star Citizen hardcore like EVE. Yeah.
What was that, Richie?
And then you put them in the learning cliff later, because EVE is like, it's so easy to start EVE. And then all of a sudden it's just pew.
Well, that's the thing, is that I think you could easily take the current system that currently exists with what is it? The mentor missions, the mentor system, the guide system, which I hate because it's on the website, not in the game. I think you could take the guide system and just turn that into profession thing, where like you get a job, you get a mission where you can pick up another player and basically be their mentor for a specific field. So like the Rust Society, which is famously like salvage mining and trading, you can just you work for the Rust Society, you get reputation, you'll get like a young neophyte will be able to do it. And you can take that mission, and the players will be able to play with that player if they want to, and that player will then be able to show them the ropes a little bit more beyond the tutorial. So they're actually out into the deep end, but they got someone holding them up. You know, they got someone there to catch them if they fall and give them a chance. And they have reputation because they already had that reputation with that group, so they're already been pre-screened by the game. So they're not going to just suddenly kidnap them and throw them off into the deep end. They could still do that, but it would risk their reputation, and it would also be still a crazy adventure for a player to deal with, you know. So, and that goes into the whole point of what CIG is trying to push with players interacting with other players. So, Reggie, do you think that CIG should have some sort of instanced new player experience or new player zone?
I agree with what your kind of position on this was to have like a simulator that's optional and you get some reward out of it, but and different professions, especially different gameplay loops in general. But at the end of the day, I think the guide system is more long-term. Mm-hmm. It needs to be in the game. It needs to be more robust, and it shouldn't be like where you have to beg people to go back to the website and to accept and get done. And you know, I've met some of my friends on my friends list out of the mm-hmm. guide system. I've been an org mate, so I mean it's pretty swell if you give it a chance.
Yeah, it's a good system. I like the system. I just needs to be in game. I'd use it in game. I'd be a guide in a second if it was in game. Be like, do it. I'll do it. Let's go. You know. All right. Next question comes from Centurion, who asks, "What do you think about this year's CitizenCon?" Vertigo, your thoughts on it? Do you know about the update?
Yes, we read the thing on stream where they're going to do CitizenCon Direct, similar to Nintendo Direct, and I mean, considering how things are going in the world right now, like it makes sense to try to save as much money as possible and focus on getting Squadron 42 out the door, because who knows if anybody's going to be able to afford to buy this shit, right?
Yeah.
People get so and keep politics out of my gaming. Well, too bad. It's all politics, dipshit.
This isn't even a political discussion at this point. It's like I had to rush to buy new equipment because I need it as a content creator. My rig is old. It's not dying, but it's too old to handle current games. And if I want to cover Squadron 42 appropriately, since I'm like 90% sure that it's going to arrive between now and 2026, and I'm 100% sure it's going to arrive sometime between 2026 and 2027, early 2027. At the very least, if it has a delay, I need to have a rig that can handle it. And with all these tariffs things, I'm like, I'm not spending 4 times the amount of money that I currently already have, which is already $2,800 to buy a new rig. I don't want to spend an additional like several $1,000s down the ride. So I had to bite the bullet and purchase what I could get right now because that's the future. And that's a serious consideration for players, for the game, for gamers, and for travel. So that's not a like a, whoa, we're getting into politics. Your thoughts on the current president of the United States? Like, no, that's nothing to do with this. This is just the practical realities of what's going on, you know? So go ahead, Vertigo.
So yeah, like it makes sense. You know, CIG wants to save money. Also, you know, travel restrictions may be coming up in the future. It's travel's uncertainty. So even like we don't know if we're gonna have the money for it. It makes sense. It makes sense to have like an online. Also, they have the objective of getting Squadron 42 at the door. So this requires less resources to get the presentations ready, less opportunity cost on CIG's own employees. So I think it makes sense. The problem is that CitizenCon, in-person CitizenCon, is always good at building hype, right? Yeah. There's always that very, very core group of fans that want to show up and support you, and it's great for building the face-to-face interpersonal relationships that are hard to like break apart, and that's that kind of the glue that helps keep the Star Citizen community going together, keeps the hype from dying down. I once asked one of my bosses who had a NASCAR tattoo on his forearm, like, it's a lot better in person, isn't it? He goes, oh yeah, it is. Like being there in person and feeling the crowd, the cheering and whatnot, seeing Chris Roberts shaking his hand, talking. I'm sure Chris Roberts could probably convince an Eskimo to buy ice cream.
Yeah.
Yeah. He seems like one of those guys that he could talk your ear off and you'd love every minute of it.
Fun fact, I actually met somebody who used to work at Origin. She was a producer at Origin, so she'd been worked on the Ultima series for a long time. She's just recently getting into teaching, and I was talking with her at work, and I was asking like what was it like, and she said the first time I met Chris Roberts, he was 18 years old, and he walked up to me and he said, "Hello, I'm Chris Roberts, creator of Wing Commander," and I was like, just like that. He said, "Wing Commander," and I used to give him shit about it and still give him shit about it as much as I can if I ever see him, because all those people still talk with each other and stuff like that. So just there's a fun little anecdote about that. But yeah, so he's gotten a lot more charismatic in his age from his awkward 18-year-old days.
I mean, we all were kind of awkward back in those days.
Yeah. Reggie, your thoughts on CitizenCon? You know about the CitizenCon situation, right?
Yes.
Okay.
So I agree. Good or bad? I agree with what you guys are saying. It's good that it's digital this year. I get it. I know it hurts for a lot of the community that are diehards and we're planning. I mean, I know some people that were already planning savings to be able to go. And I'm glad that CIG got it out the door, letting them know quickly, like, hey, this ain't going to happen this year. That's why we haven't announced a home for it, which studio city it is. I think also in the future, I would like to see it come back in person. I hope, first of all, I hope it's a good digital this year, but I want to just mention one little thing. It being in a studio city makes it very expensive when it comes to hotels and food and everything. There are places, and I'll mention it here. I don't live in Phoenix, but a good example is Phoenix. It's a good convention city because it's so cheap for food. It's so cheap for airfare. You buy like a $10 pass and you can get all week on a hop on hop off trolley system that goes all through the convention area, all the way to the airport, by the way. So it's dirt cheap. And that's an example of like, I'm not saying it's the only one, but it would be interesting to see, at least try it 1 year in a convention friendly town and see if, how many people we can get out there and how cheap it would be. If people saw it was like half price, they'd be like, wow, I might go to that this year, and it'd be a little more groups of people. I think it'd be more energy.
I think, yeah.
For the future.
Especially if they did it every year in one place, even if it wasn't in a studio city, because that can reduce the cost even more. This is where I'm going to insert my own the only event that I'm part of right now, which is Quantum Vegas, which is going on July 12th. I'm going to be one of the hosts there, but we're also Star Jump Grim is going to be there. Serious Fun's going to be there. We've got people from CIG who will be there, like Galactica and Tyler Witkin and Sean Tracy. I think is scheduled. They may or may not be able to make it. They right now are confirmed, but things can happen. Things can change. But it's going to be a big event with a lot of different players and stuff like that. Community members coming to join us. So check that out if you want to go to a physical location. But the reason why we chose Vegas to go for that is because Vegas is a city that is used to conventions. And, it's more than just a convention city. You can go there's lots of other things to do there. So it's a great sort of general location to go there. And because they already have all of these sorts of systems set up, it's not too bad to do it in those locations. And there's lots of options for it. So I wouldn't say cheap, but it's relatively inexpensive compared to what we could have done in like Austin. Like, I don't think Austin's always got events going on, so it's a lot more difficult to do. So I think I'd find a place like you said, Phoenix, or I've heard people talk about Chicago as a possible location, or there's plenty of cities that have good convention centers, which are relatively inexpensive in comparison to the bigger locations. I like Digital Citizen Con. I'm gonna be controversial and say I don't like in-person Citizen Cons, not because they're bad. I have been to in-person Citizen Cons, many of them, pretty much all of them in the U.S. since 2016. I think I've been to almost all of them. But the issue is that every single year, it's fairly clear that CIG it removes about 3 months of work from any given developer's timetable. They have to basically take 3 months off of the year just to prepare for CitizenCon. 1 to 3 months. So it definitely delays development of the game, and it adds cost because they have to pay, for the venue, and a lot of it is paid for with tickets and other things that go into it. And they definitely have offsets. They have sponsors who come and help them out. But I can imagine it's not 100% covered by everything. And they probably, especially since they do other events around it and such, so they probably do lose some money off of it long term. But it's a good morale booster for their own staff, because it's their own mini GDC, game development conference. People don't know what that means, where developers can come there and show off things they've been working on for months or years of their life, and they can actually show it off to people who will go, oh yeah, and cheer about, because where else are you going to get the feeling of presenting your weather systems in a video game where people are going to stand up and clap and scream about how awesome it is? That's not really something that people think about, especially in most video game companies. You may at best get a chance to do that presentation at GDC 3 years after the game is released. No one knows who you are, but here we've got the water guy, the hydro homie, or Sean Tracy, all that kind of stuff. So I can't imagine it's a big morale booster, a big like incentive to let's do this sort of thing. But I also think it just generally doesn't. Star Citizen isn't a place where it deserves that sort of event. 1.0, yeah. 142 release, yeah. And I get why they're doing it this year, because they want to focus on Squadron, and they want to put all the resources that would usually go into CitizenCon into Squadron's marketing and such, which is good. But yeah, I think it's a good idea so far. All right, next question. Dell asks, Align and Mine is as well as Wicklow and the CZs are repeatable, grindable experiences in Star Citizen. What other grindable experiences would you like to see before or by 1.0? Reggie?
I would say that I would like to see more hauling that actually doesn't involve combat. That would be, I think, one of the biggest groups. I'm full disclosure, I'm not even huge on that, but if there was enough incentive to have some fun space trucking between some of the more high impact stuff, I would welcome it, especially if there was a way to do it in relative, I'm just looking to relax. I just did some missions with my org, having some combat fun, PvE or PvP, PvX, and now I want to have just some relaxing time. I think Eve has that in spades because you sit in the station, you do your research, you do your sell orders, you do your moving, and then your hauling, if you're doing it in the right way, is actually pretty safe. And I'll debate anybody to the day I die about that. I did it over a decade. But
Yeah.
If you're doing it the right way anyway, not making bad decisions. But when it comes to our game, when it comes to Star Citizen, we don't have that like relaxed, truly able to just kind of, space out and have a good time in between.
Throw up a podcast in the background, kind of thing. Yeah.
There's always high intensity because you're always worried, is that little blip over there a player, and is that player going to go murder hobo? And it's like, I just sometimes want to be able to relax in the game and spend more time in it and just space out.
Yeah. I would like stories.
Of course, the lore guy wants
stories. The lore guy wants stories. But I'd like mini stories, like stuff that's repeatable and grindable, but like, you get yourself up to a point where you tell a story with a mission giver. Once you reach the maximum affinity with that mission giver, they can give you some like radiant stuff and that sort of thing, that sort of experience, and maybe even like tiered. So like you have a tier of a story. There's a story that's being told. You reach the end, and then now that you have that maximum experience, you have another story that'll happen, several time. So you just randomly get that story that someone calls you up, like Wicklow calls you up out of the blue and is like, I got a deal. I need to do this. You're the first person I called. Could you come help me out with this situation? And telling a story that's sort of generic so everyone can do it, but also gives you an idea of who these characters are, who you're working with, the mission representatives and such, so that they can sort of build off of that foundation. Vertigo, your thoughts. What are some sort of repeatable, grindable experiences that you want to see?
Base building, crafting, done.
Easy?
Yeah, base building, crafting. You can craft equipment by mining stuff. You can build bases by extracting, mining stuff, buying supplies and whatnot.
Expanding your bases, yeah.
Yeah. There you go.
I think that also kind of fits that sort of what Red Jay was talking about, the sort of chill out experience where you can sit there and just pump out weapons with your crafting. You don't have to like do anything too crazy. So. All right. Nail asks, or is it Nail or Nail? I think it's Nail. It's Knale. So imagine that's Nail. Nail asks, what would y'all like to see in terms of potential scanning focused gameplay in Nyx? Vertigo.
Oh God, scanning gameplay in Nyx. Nyx is like a barren system though. Like, what are you going to find in there? Like alien artifacts, smuggling,
its main
ships.
Its main feature is kind of like how Pyro's main feature is supposed to be. It's solar flares that don't exist currently. Nyx's main feature is that it's at the edge of a dark nebula, so it's super hard to see anything. So like scanning is a big issue. Like you only see like, it's like basically a foggy system where you only see this far ahead of your face. So you have to constantly ping and scan. So it's very...
And just like in Pyro trying to go to, what is it, Checkmate?
Yeah.
So yeah, you constantly ping and you come across a Hathor alignment facility. And it's like, congratulations, you can align the facility to activate the laser beam. To like activate a laser that cuts through the fog. And then congratulations, you can get to Delamar faster or something. I don't know.
Okay. Red Jay? What kind of scanning focused gameplay would you like to see in Nyx?
The biggest thing for me is plain and simple being able to sell waypoints. I think that's a bigger topic, but that system will benefit greatly from it. That you spend the time, you did the scanning gameplay, and maybe there's something here that you can't bite off by yourself, so you save it for your org and you can share it. Or, hey, I'm logging off, I got to go to work, but hey, EU crew, check this out. Or on the flip side of it, you could sell it, and there should be a method to do that and get some money for it.
I'm going to go with instance content. The idea that you could go into the cloud and then scan, and then every time you go into the cloud, it puts you into an instance, and you can just get a random roll. So, like, you could find an abandoned ship, or you could find an asteroid, or you could find a Vanduul invasion force, or whatever. Like just random things you could find. So it's sort of a, tall grass encounter situation. You go into the tall grass and see what NPCs pop up, sort of thing. So that way it's more about actively pinging, and going into the same area. It isn't always the same. You have to kind of dial in your scanners so you know exactly what's going on. So Star Hulk, like a Space Hulk in 40K, like that sort of idea where it's just sort of, you never know what you're gonna get. it could be long lost STC technology, or it could be a demon invasion. Who knows? So sort of like it could be an entire Vanduul fleet hiding in the fog, or it could be a new car. Next question comes from Iris Dreadtide, who asks, do you think A Lion in Mine and the Rayari regen story is actually Frontier Fighters plot? And Elliot got us again. We fell for it again. I'll ask the question in a more serious one. Red J, do you think CIG will pull the same trick twice?
It's possible. It's possible completely. I mean, that it's content, gets people in, gets people riled up for any different reasons. I welcome it. Yeah, we'll see.
Vertigo, same question to you. Do you think they'll do the same?
No.
We tricked you,
no.
No,
I made a joke about that on Reddit where people were posting like pictures of like the lore. You can pick up those data pads right around the Rayari not the Rayari facility, the Hathor facilities, and it gives you a little bit more backstory about how Hathor became Hathor.
It explains how the Valakar got on.
Valakar,
on there too.
My response to that was like, oh, do we get to find out we're the terrorists because we're killing Valakars, they're protected species or something? Got you. You guys are really killing like endangered species, like it's a super endangered species, and a Valakar almost don't exist anywhere, but you're killing the last Valakar or some shit.
Yeah.
How do you feel, assholes? I don't know, pretty good. These things are pretty goddamn creepy.
Yeah, I mean, I've already said so many about it that like I feel like CIG, it misses the point when it comes to storytelling sometimes, whereas like this is a sandbox game. There should be no bad guys. The only bad guys should be people who always are trying to kill you. And players need to have an incentive to like hate factions and also to like factions. Not just sort of like so many people in that storyline were like, but I like the Frontier Fighters. Like, but they're genocidal. And they're like, yeah, that's why I joined them. I want to commit genocide. Like never underestimate the how many players are just going to be shitbags for the sake of being shitbags. Yeah. So, all right. Next question comes from Fred Eric Schultz on YouTube, who asks, for the active chat as well, what were so far your experiences with the Mission Giver, and how do you see them evolve in the short term? I think they're talking about Wicklow. Have you done the Wicklow mission yet, Vertigo?
I've done the intro for it, and a lot of the stuff he's offering I have no interest in. Like the guns with the skins, they look awful. The armor is just a gigantic glow stick.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, who the hell? I've seen people wear them into contested zones, and I'm like, that's a dude right over there. Pop, 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 he's dead. Like, it's why would you wear something like that into a CZ? Oh my god.
It looks cool.
Like, I guess
you say that, Mr. Clown Armor.
Yeah, well, it doesn't get me shot by my own teammates. That's the job. That's the job of a uniform. Yeah, it looks stupid, but hey, at least my own team doesn't shoot me unless they hate me intentionally.
Red J, your thoughts on the Mission Giver on Wicklow so far?
I like that Wicklow has a completely different style than most things. I also like that Wicklow's content, while it is a little garish in some cases, I agree.
Spanu, baby.
It's wild. Yeah, and that's the thing. This is the first in-game earnable content that you don't have to go running through 60,000 boxes to find in-game, that you can just earn it. And it's fun, it's cool, it reminds me of subscriber gear without having to buy it. I welcome that. I think we need more of Mr. Banu, our first Banu of Stanton who's visiting. Yes, I like it.
I'm disappointed that he's not actually a physical NPC.
Yet. He's not a physical NPC yet.
He's there. Yeah.
But he is the first Banu merchantman we've ever seen in game.
Hey! I was waiting for that joke. I was
waiting to use it.
Yeah, I like them. I like Wicklow. I like the idea and the implication, because in the monthly report they talked about how they're going to be doing 2 completely new mission givers that's going to be released in 4.2 probably with 2. They're basically faction heads. I'm hoping beyond hope that it's the mission givers we've been getting from the Citizens for Prosperity and for the Headhunters, because if you take those missions, they have a name at the bottom of all of those missions. I'm hoping it's those 2 that we've been seeing in the missions that we'll actually get to meet and talk to, because I think that how you tell a story in a game like Star Citizen is based around character, because you can't really connect to a faction in a sandbox game because they're sort of nebulous. But if you can connect to the characters who are giving you those missions, because they become the embodiment of what that faction is. And as for its flaws, Destiny 2 was really good at building this sort of, who would have thought it? Bungie, famous at, doing one of the most popular video games of all time with really, really beloved characters, was able to do a game where people could identify with the characters whom they were working with all the time. And I think that's the key is CIG developing characters that people can connect to, will then connect them to the universe, which will then give them a stake in the game beyond just, I like the skin sort of situation. There'll still be people who like the skin, like Vertigo, who will just do it because he wants to do it. But I think more people would have buy-in if you have that sort of thing. So Wicklow is a great example, and I hope that Wicklow continues to advance and we get to see more of Wicklow and meet them in person beyond just their torso and their head, which is currently, that's all they are, a torso and a head. But we'll see. I have to ask this question, even though I stopped answering the questions. Gin and Tonic asks, what's the probability of 4.0 being released on 6.9 or 4.2?
4.20 released on 6.9. I think very slim, unless CIG. I don't feel like it's a joke that CIG would do intentionally.
I would be okay with him. I would be okay with him doing that, because that legitimately has a chance, because usually they do they'll do like 4.1.1 probably by May, and that'll probably be our Invictus patch, and then they'll do a 4 and then they have a chance to do a 4.2 by June, because that would be the next big one. And June 9th is 6.9. That would be, I would give so much points to CIG for doing the meme. So much chops.
It's the only time they could do it too. So if they want to do it, they better.
It's the best time to do it. Do it. I'm so mad at CIG for ruining the 314 by not adding pizza. The pie patch, so they could add pizza to the pie patch. But shut up, Chris. stupid non-Americans, and your more logical dating system of having having the day before the month. So many people just got confused as to why I said 4.2 should be released in September. All right, next question. Comes from Red Marine, who asks, do you think running FOMO events while really needing testers for the PTU is having an effect on test numbers? Red J?
I've seen it. I mean, I've seen even people that normally do tests, less of them, and you got to be careful whenever you measure it. And my advice to people is, because sometimes they'll say, well, I went on when the golem was snuck in there and everybody was on. And it's like, yes, for that moment they were, and then they all disappeared again. Just remember that every time when we talk about the PTU Evo numbers and stuff, it's like the general number, build to build to build to build to build. The soldiers get less. There's an attrition rate.
When CIG releases some big sexy thing into the PTU, everybody shows up to check it out, and then they're gone. Like if CIG releases like the Polaris into the PTU, everybody and their mother shows up to fuck with the Polaris a little bit, and then they're like, okay, that's cool. And then they go back to live, or they go back to playing something else.
Yep, I agree.
It's a good stress test.
But it's temporary. It's one of the reasons why I think CIG rushes through PTU now. Like they rush to the open PTU, and then they just, if they can do it, they release. But if they can't, they don't. And I think CIG's at the point where they're just like, fuck it, do it live, because there's no reason to keep it here unless we have to absolutely because we're just going to fix the problems, then it's going to go live and break again. So, all right. McBain48 asks, back to the last question. Even well-made sound effects for finding bugs or testing, think WoW Level Up, could help dopamine hit. Yeah. Good. CIG has a good sound effects team. They have good music team. They could easily come up with some good dopamine hit sounds. So wasn't, yeah, but the fact you put question in there, McBain, means it gets caught by the bot. The bot will capture anything that says question in it. I say brackets because the brackets help sort out the people who are just using question in a sentence versus actually asking a question. Speaking of, it's full. You didn't know that. Speaking of which, Iris Dreadtide asks, right now, the majority of ways to interact with other players is adversarial, or at least the game most easily structures these interactions as adversarial. How would you implement more cooperative player interactions? Where to go?
I mean, obviously, to having stuff that you need to work together to get done. I mean, you can argue Hathor requires teamwork to even make progress on. Same with CZs. I mean, you can go in as a solo player, but if there's other groups of players in there, you're kind of screwed. So you definitely need to bring backup if you're going to do contested zones. Obviously, the big knee jerk reaction is like, oh, engineering, multiplayer agreeing pay.
But how do you get those?
Need to reduce the amount of,
how do you get those people to go into the same ship? How do you get a bunch of random strangers to go on the same ship?
Yeah. I mean, there's people out there who say, I love being an engineer, love fixing stuff. Yeah, but that could be the only person. We go back to like World of Warcraft, trying to find people who are willing to play tank or support, or back when we were playing Overwatch, trying to find people who don't want to play DPS, who want to play tank. League of Legends, trying to find people who want to play support instead of everybody insta-locking ADC carry, AD carry. It's like, we need a tank. Everybody locks AD carry or a mage or whatever the latest hot shit is for that patch. And it's just like, oh, we don't have any tanks on our team. What are we going to do? I guess we'll lose, right?
I guess we just lose. Back to that feels bad situation.
Yeah, that feels bad situation where you need people to play certain roles and you need to make those roles engaging for the average person, right? Not just the person who wants to play that role. So I don't know what CIG is going to do. Like, incentivize people, because trying to get people to play like a Polaris together, get people playing the turrets. One turret on this one side of the ship doesn't see any action, so the guy doing that turret gets kind of bored. I don't know. Like, I remember playing games like what was it? Guns of Icarus was kind of fun. You could just run around the ship and just do whatever the hell you want most of the time. The ships were really small too, so you didn't have to like. That's one thing that kind of holds stuff back, like running through all the doors to get to various positions. Like, reducing friction to do stuff is kind of something that helps a little bit. Like, the tier 0 item recovery helps a lot with like gearing yourself out to go back into like a contested zone.
I'm pointing up there because if you're watching this after the fact, there'll be a little pop-up that pops up above Vertigo's head, because that was the topic of our last video, our last episode of the Caps Table, was reducing friction in Star Citizen. How can it be done?
Yeah.
So, I think that's partially the answer of how to get more people in. You have to have a way of reducing the friction, and we talked about specifically agent smithing, which is a way of getting more players to do that. I came up with my idea of sort of a scav inspired idea, which for those of you who played Tarkov, which is you can play as a scav, which is sort of an under equipped but generically equipped NPC. You get to control, and anything you take out you get to keep, but you don't necessarily get to keep that scav's loadout. The idea of being able to do sort of a hardcore character that just starts with almost nothing, and then you can just reset it whenever you want to, and you can then get onto people's ships. So you can just say, hey, I've gotten this hardcore character, which I'll just drop onto the station. Meet you at the station, we'll get to go with it. But I think the best way of doing cooperation rather than adversarial is to have a common enemy that players can play against in an instance environment where they're not going to get ganked by another group, while also allowing for better communication. They need to fix the in-game voice system. They need to have a better chat system than they currently have. Those are the things that are big. Having social organization stuff that they talked about at CitizenCon, That is so important for cooperative gameplay. Without those tools, it becomes a lot harder. It's still a lot harder to actually get to groups together. So, Red J, the same question. How do you change from confrontational, from adversarial to more cooperative gameplay?
I remember, I'll bring up DayZ. We've cited it a few times in this, and there's other games like we've mentioned already in nauseam. But in DayZ, when I was there from the beginning as well, when it first came out, everybody was killing everybody. But then there was mods like Heroes and Bandits, I think was the one that I played a lot of, where you had to get together to build an outpost, to build like a base of your own that you could all work together to build. All of a sudden, you could also keep your stuff. It was very hard to raid these things, especially when they were set up correctly. And you could keep the cars, you could keep resources. It felt like you made progress as a group. And it was better than trying to hide a tent in the middle of in the woods and hoping somebody doesn't find it. So, or you get shot and lose all your stuff because you're just walking around with it everywhere. I feel like that's one of the biggest things. The outpost in general, back to Star Citizen, will greatly help. I do think that they'll continue the progress on having safe outposts, semi-safe outposts, and dangerous, lawless outposts that are like, you're on your own, your org better protect you, good luck. I like that, and I hope they embrace that at that tri-level, because there will be people that become strong, and then, personal life breaks in, and they have to go to the safer limitations, pull back their resources, or vice versa. They want to strike it out and risk everything on the line for some super valuable resource in deep hearts of Pyro or Nyx or whatever. I want to see both. And that means that people will band together, and that means that you'll have that working together. People will be killing each other for the right reasons.
I also think reputation, just straight up reputation is a good example. Because if you have reputation, you have positive reputation with an organization, and somebody else does, it'd be easier to say, you like those guys, I like those guys. You want to do this mission together? Kind of thing. So,
yeah.
All right. Hold on. Do something real quick. Jump on some of these discussions, these uploads. I'm uploading the first part of the story of our discussion right now. This next question comes from, we got 2 more questions. A boy named Doll asks, if not a prison system, what system would you implement in Star Citizen's combat to combat griefing / murder hoboing and bad actors? Red J? You mentioned something about this before, like there needs to be something beyond the prison system as well.
Yeah, so right now the prison system is plain and simple. You go there, you AFK or you log off or whatever, and you come back, it's no problem. Or you escape or whatever else. It's harder to escape now than it used to be. But there's people who can game the entire system in under an hour, they're out, even if they want to do it the hard way. Then their record's clean, completely clean. And that's a problem. I believe that if somebody has a pattern of murder hoboing endlessly, they should start accruing a more long-term reputation over real-world months, build to build, version to version, whatever you want to say, release to release, whole entire series of builds. I feel like that's the most important thing, and that other players can readily identify. Once they're scanned down, they know what they're dealing with. It would infinitely make it easier. I personally have killed A1s because I have friends on the ground, and I write in chat, I'm screaming in VoIP, they're not listening. I kill them, and then they get mad at me, and it's like I have no idea who you are. I can't trust that you're not just going to bomb my friends.
Yeah.
Really?
I mean, obviously, long-term reputation would definitely help this stuff. They showed this stuff at Con where you can have like, you have an org, you're enemies to that org. If anyone joins that org, they immediately get flagged as red to you. When you're in, civilized space, basically just like EVE Online, hand wave kind of over that, kind of something like that. But yeah, like you really get punished for like trusting people, and if someone shows up in a ship like Red J said, like an A1, like there's certain ships you just have to kill. A long time ago was the Warlock. You saw a Warlock show up, you knew that was a griefing ship.
Yeah.
You know, back in like the 2.6 days and 3.0 days, the Warlock.
There's also currently the Mantis is a very similar way. You see a Mantis, you kill the Mantis. Like, you know, there's only one reason for it. So
Cutlass Blue, Mantis, you know, Polaris shows up. Like, I don't know about that, folks. But yeah, like we definitely need more long term. One thing I suggested was having like player kills account for like some sort of invisible ranking, where if you just kill players more and more and more, you eventually just get pushed into a server where you get more kill players all the time. And then the players who have very few player kills get pushed into a different server, a different instance of the same area where you have less players killed. So you can kind of have that little bit of a divide where people who want to kill more players get shoved into a server that have more player killers, so they can all kill each other. And the players who don't kill a lot of players get shoved into a more peaceful server where they can all be just happy and glad. But everybody can still kind of mix together a little bit. You'll still occasionally see the player kills show up in the. I don't know. It's an idea I had.
Yeah, I think CIG's talked about something like that as well. I think it's a good way of doing it, especially since they do have a matchmaking system that does function like that, where they can sort out people in terms of where they go. And that's how you get priority to join players who you have on your contacts list to join their servers versus others. I think the idea, as Red J pointed out as well, the idea of having long-term reputation should have some impact. I don't think it should be permanent, but I do think that it should be kind of like a criminal record. Once you have a criminal record, it's hard to shake it. It's gonna, it usually takes time and effort for you to sort of remove yourself. And Star Citizen is a much worse world in terms of society than even the United States. Which has already got a lot of big stigma with people who have a criminal record. So it should be significant. Like, that should significantly hit you, not just from a lore standpoint, from a player standpoint. That should definitely give you more of the old red player syndrome, where like you should show up as red. There should be some sort of asterisk or some sort of thing that immediately pops up when you see a player who has that sort of reputation that goes, ooh. And there should be restricted from certain actions in lawful zones. Like, they can't go to certain places. Like, they'll show up, and that'll be even more immersive. You show up to a shop and someone says, no, you're out. We don't like your kind around here, or something like that. So, like, you should be some consequences for your actions beyond just, I went to jail and I left. So,
yeah.
But there should always be ways of removing that criminal record or that reputation by gaining reputation with the UEE or doing other things like that. Someone says, what about me who's innocent but always gets bad luck and gets me a criminal record? There should still be ways of pulling you out of that negative reputation, but it should require effort, There's someone, Red Marine actually clarified something about that. They said, I don't think I clarified it correctly. When they run FOMO events on the live server, that really tanks their numbers of testers because they don't want to miss the live event. That's another reason. I think what we talked about when we talked about that was like, people just would run it and they'd be done and they'd be finished. But yeah, that's another reason. I've seen that plenty of times where people don't want to go on the PTU because they're like, well, I want to do this event live. I don't get the actual credit for completing it until I go to live. So why would I play it? I play it so I know what it does, and then I'll do it live instead of coming back and playing and testing it. It's definitely a problem. Yeah. All right. We got one more question. Last question. From Seth Speedshop, who asks, if the unannounced variant of the popular ship is the MSR, what variant would you all like? Vertigo? What kind of variant would you like on the MSR?
MSR? How about like just a cargo hauling version? Or how about a version of the MSR where they get rid of that stupid crawl space? The MSR thinner. The MSR went on a diet. The MSR slim fast variant. There you go. That's my kind of semi-serious answer. MSR variant with a second entrance.
Red J, any variants?
Yeah, you got me thinking. Honestly, I would love to see an MSR that is like an electronic warfare platform. I think that would be an amazing, fun thing to see. Treat it as a testbed ship to get those type of things in game. The Vanguard, with the Jester and every Sentinel and all that. The Vanguard Sentinel and its Jester mentality, I'm sure will come later. Who cares? But, I think in general, an MSR that does like basic Eve War platform stuff would be really, really, really fun in that multi-crew role.
All right. I'm gonna go crazy. I'm gonna go wild with what I want. What I want with a MSR is a bounty hunting version
with freezer pods in the back.
Freezer pods in the back. Give it a quantum dampener or quantum stare. Give it everything that the Mantis has, and remove the cargo bay for freezer pods and a weapons rack, and like all that sort of wonderful things. But I also like the slim fast version of the MSR. But I think the whole thing should be. How about the data running an MSR that actually works? I mean but let's not get ahead of ourselves there. All right. That's the last question. Thank you so much for joining us. Make sure you check out HC Vertigo, twitch.tv/HC Vertigo. Check out Red J, youtube.com/RedJ. And of course, watch Red J's video, which inspired the whole conversation we had earlier in the day, which will be right above Vertigo's head if you want to go check that out and hear our discussions about 4.1 and some of the failures of 4.1 currently with the Hathor system and how it is more systemic in origin, not necessarily just the Hathor missions, and also how the Hathor missions could be improved. And if you did enjoy this, we do this live at twitch.tv/theastropub, youtube.com/@thecaptainstable-podcast. And if you haven't already done so, hit that subscribe button. It does help out a lot. We're on our way to 1,000 subscribers, which gives us access to partnership on the Captain Stable Podcast YouTube. And if we manage to get that, big deal, because it means that YouTube will then start recommending our videos more frequently, because it doesn't recommend videos too often to people if it can't monetize it. So that'll help spread the word a little bit more. And another way of doing that is liking the video. You hit that like button, it tells YouTube that this is a good video, and it will recommend it to other people like you who are maybe involved in Star Citizen or like space games or just like clickbait titles about space games. And hit the bell icon to be notified when these come out and when these go live. As always, I want to hear your thoughts on any of these questions and more down below. And like I say every time, hope to see you someday